article that you wrote about the genetic similarities between Jews and Palestinians. But the material provided by the Fidler campaign references some other articles, which is what they are referring to as an approving article about Jim Gilchrist with American Minutemen, and also writing approvingly of people in South Africa involved in the Afrikaner independence movement. Did you write about those people, and do you approve of their views?
Well, let's start. There are two separate articles. Both of them, by the way, were interviews. Neither one was an article. I want to make it very clear. You're interviewing me right now. That doesn't mean that you either support or oppose me. In terms of the Afrikaner article, there was nothing out there approving or negative. Just if you look at every other interview that I've ever done as a journalist, and I've done dozens of them, regardless of the points of view, and you see interviews there that have the views that are clearly divergent from mine in many, many cases, I've never let my bias be known. This is what I did. I don't do journalism anymore, but when I interviewed people, just like you today, I asked open-ended questions. That is a proper thing to do. Just because you interview me or you interview someone else doesn't mean that you support me or that you oppose me. Just because the New York Times interviews someone doesn't mean that they support or oppose someone. To say that a journalist who interviews someone is necessarily tied to them. And by the way, in neither case were they Nazis. But to say that the journalist is tied to them, that the journalist agrees with them, is an assault on journalism. It is not just an assault on Jews and Russians, and it's an assault on reason. It's an assault on the media. So basically what he's saying is that no journalist is ever allowed to interview anyone that they disagree with. It is every journalist, of which I was one, should be offended by this idea. How could you as a journalist, you personally as a journalist, how could you do your job if you're not allowed to speak to people who you don't necessarily agree with? You do stories because they might be interesting to people. You are here not because you support me, but because you think this is something that your viewers might be interested in. That is the only reason that any journalist interviews people. So for him to say that just because I interviewed someone, it means I support them, or I oppose them, or I'm neutral on them, is irrelevant. The facts are that I was a journalist. And as a journalist, it was my job to interview people.
We're